Are we all there? No.
Yes, sir, we are all here. The program will begin very short. It will begin shortly, sir.
We now have in our midst our esteemed guests. With the blessings of Father, we would like to begin our program. Members of this august audience, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on the COVID-19 pandemic, lives, livelihoods, and challenges, the first of its kind international webinar organized by the Postgraduate Department of Economics, St. Xavier's College Autonomous, Kolkata.
Humanity today struggles to create and adhere to a new normal in these treacherous times. And we find ourselves adopting unique methods and extensively utilizing technology in order to continue with our professional, academic, and personal lives. However, it is important that apart from carrying on with our occupations, we take conscious note of how this pandemic is affecting the fabric of our society and what the future holds for us all. As students and professionals, it is our job to reflect on how individuals less fortunate than us and with lesser means have suffered in this crisis, and to deliberate upon how we can collectively make amends to our socio-economic structures so that we may prevent and be prepared for the happening of such situations in the future. It is in this light, ladies and gentlemen, that we present to you this opportunity for enlightenment by our esteemed guests.
Gracing the occasion with us today, we have Reverend Father Dr. Dominic Savio, Principal St. Xavier's College, Autonomous, Kolkata. Ladies and gentlemen, Father needs no introduction, but we believe it is our humble duty to illuminate you on the rich legacy that he has created for himself. Father has been a professor of economics at St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, vice principal of Commerce Morning, and BBA. He is also the president of the St. Xavier's College Alumni Association. Despite his busy administrative schedule, Father is deeply engaged in academic work and research. He has been awarded his PhD by the Burdwan University on his thesis titled Impact of World Trade Organization on Indian Agricultural Trade. Reverend Father Dr. Dominic Savio is the recipient of the prestigious Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Award for his contribution to higher education, as well as the Award for Excellence in Education and Philanthropy by the Bengal National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Father played an instrumental role in reviving Eco Echoes, the annual economics journal published by the Department of Economics in Xavier's College, Kolkata. Under his leadership, the Department of Economics has also organized various seminars and conferences in the past. In such torrid times, Father has been leading the college, and his leadership has been a source of inspiration for all of us. I now invite Dr. Parthopratim Ghosh, Senior Faculty Member of the Department of Economics and Coordinator, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, to welcome Father.
Thank you, Priya. On behalf of the head of the department and the entire fraternity of economics, I now welcome our principal, Reverend Dr. Dominic Savio of the Society of Jesus, to inaugurate this international webinar with his welcome address and keynote speech. We all know that Father is an economist, but beyond that, Father is an educationalist, a philanthropist, and a social activist. Dear Father, kindly initiate and preside over this webinar.
Thanks, Priya, and thank you very much, Dr. Parthopratim Ghosh. Very good evening to all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the international webinar on the COVID-19 pandemics, lives, livelihoods, and challenges, organized by the Postgraduate Department of Economics, St. Xavier's College Autonomous, Kolkata, in collaboration with Yunus Centre Bangladesh. The Postgraduate Department of Economics is a new feather in the wings of this prestigious institution. This webinar is the very first academic endeavor of this department. We are glad and honored to have with us the esteemed speakers, Nobel Laureate Professor Mohammad Yunus, Chairman, Yunus Centre Bangladesh, and Professor Raghabendra Chattopadhyay, Professor of Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, at this international webinar. 7 months have passed since the day the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic and not just a Chinese-centric shock. We were led to witness not only a health crisis, but also an economic one, which ultimately gave way to the humanitarian crisis. To put matters straight, the true cost of this pandemic is far beyond the direct health costs of treatment, hospitalization, and death, because the indirect costs include the economic fallout, which has crippled even the most resilient of markets, threatening the national and global growth. I feel this webinar has been organized at the most opportune moment, where we desperately need to open up discussion on the lives versus livelihoods debate, as India is slowly wild into the epicenter of the crisis. Let us slowly engage ourselves, discuss the problem, dissecting each sector with precision, and analyze whether we are on the right path or not. The health crisis. The biggest fear with the novel coronavirus is its virulence and tendency of rapidly affecting millions. As World Health Organization and the world debates the origin and the nature of the spread of infection, it continues to have its effect on millions across the globe, and especially India in particular. India on Thursday reported 86,821 new infections in the last 24 hours, taking its total to 6.39 million cases. The country leads the world in the daily average number of new infections reported. The infection rates, infection per population, per day has increased from 420 in the month of April to 54,625 in August in India, while for the globe, it has been 74,570 in April to 2,83,793 in August. Daily death rates has increased from 11 to 1,187 for India, while for the world, the transition is from 5,017 to 5,225. The bright spot in this uncertain situation is probably an improving recovery rate. Around 5.35 million people have recovered in India. COVID-19 has opened wide the cracks in the socio-economic fabric of the Indian society, especially in terms of inequality in access to health care. Access to timely and affordable health services varies considerably for people in India, as there are significant inter and intra-state disparities. Rural-urban differentials are also severe. India's expenditure on health as a percentage of GDP is lower than the poorest countries in the world. According to a national health profile in 2019, India spends only 1.28% of its GDP as public health expenditure, and there is only one hospital per 47,000 population. In the context of COVID-19, the health inequalities pan out to produce differential exposure to the contagion. Directly emerging from travels or professionally mandated to stay on the front lines, doctors, nursing staff, health functionaries, sanitation, and transport workers are pursuing precarious livelihoods differential vulnerability resulting from biological as well as social disadvantages that create conditions for pre-existing morbidities which compromise immune systems and create constraints for adhering to the lockdown specifications. Differential consequences: higher susceptibility to death due to the virus or due to the non-receipt of medications and medical treatment for pre-existing health conditions, communicable, non-communicable, neglect of other health needs, are facing domestic violence and abuse due to the lockdown. All these cumulatively lead to mortality, hunger, and intensification of poverty and loss of well-being. These socially conditioned, unfair, and unavoidable differences throw fresh challenges for self-isolation, physical distancing, and maintaining a strong immunity. Economic crisis. Coronavirus has stifled economic activities the world over in two ways. Firstly, the rapid spread of the virus resulted into social distancing, which led to the shutdown of commodity markets, financial markets, corporate offices, businesses, and events, thus completely disrupting the production and supply chain. Secondly, the exponential rate of its spreading had increased the risk and uncertainty, leading to decay in consumption and investment among consumers, investors, and international trade partners, dismantling the demand side of the economy. The economic pain has become severe due to an acute trade-off, health or economy. Putting it simply, the trade-off is made between lives and livelihoods. As people are forced to stay home, they cannot contribute to the economic value chain. And if they go out to earn their livelihood, there is a high scope of them getting affected, which will drain their savings instead of adding to it. The economic fallout of the pandemic was severely felt in various sectors of the economy, with travel bans affecting the aviation industry, the prohibition of mass gatherings affecting the events and the entertainment industries, sporting event cancellations affecting the sports industry and whatnot. Adding to these, this unprecedented outbreak has caused immense turbulence in financial markets. It has been a tough time for the riskier assets, including emerging market stocks, bonds, and currencies. The macroeconomic slowdown led to a rise in non-performing loans in the banking sector by 250 basis points. Thus, this pandemic has virtually left no one unscathed, adding fuel to fire. International Monetary Fund predicts the global economy to shrink by over 3% in 2020, which will be the deepest slowdown since the Great Depression of the 1930s. India is also grappling with the human and macroeconomic consequences of pandemic, as the global value chains and production lines have been disrupted due to the lockdowns and restricted mobility imposed by the states. There has been a rise in the price of raw materials. Furthermore, the Indian economy also experienced a contraction of demand of almost all products due to the uncertainty and sudden fall in incomes and wages. The prices of agricultural commodities have dropped by 15 to 20% due to COVID-19, as the demand from hotels and restaurants have stopped and there is no certainty over exports. Mobility issues in the green situation have led them not to visit markets. though this has led to a rise in the e-commerce sector, but it has furthermore created disparity by lowering the income of local shop owners. Wealth effect has led to a fall in consumption through fall in financial wealth in shares and bonds. Business sentiments have lowered. The animal instincts to invest have bottomed down. Thus, the severe contraction in aggregate demand through combined effect of a fall in consumption and investment will be important in determining the output in the coming months. India has witnessed one of the stringent lockdowns throughout the world with the exemption in essential commodities. Agriculture and its markets faced a tremendous challenge due to disruptions in the supply chains. Too much enthusiasm from the government often led to closing down of agricultural mandis. Lack of transport facilities added fire to the problem, and massive amount of perishable goods were destroyed. This has also led to a difficulty in the supply of raw materials to various sectors, especially handicrafts and MSMEs. Pre-COVID-19, India was already witnessing sluggish economic growth owing to uncertainty, job loss, and unemployment, which had been captured through a fall in the consumption expenditure. The COVID pandemic has worsened the unemployment scenario with almost 2 crore salaried workers losing jobs. Data from the Consumer Pyramid Household Level Survey of the CMIE shows that the overall weekly unemployment rate went up drastically from an average of 9% in March to around 23% in May and to as high as 35% by early June. It was even higher in the urban areas compared to the rural areas. Hence, earlier Indian economy was primarily experiencing a demand slowdown, whereas now both demand and supply have been disrupted. As a result, World Bank predicts India's gross domestic product to contract by 3.2% in 2021, though there will be a moderate recovery to 3.1% growth in 21-22. Lockdown was a global policy followed mainly in economically advanced countries. But for India, it meant loss of lives, livelihood due to mainly 3 reasons. Basic structural issue of wide inequality in almost all spheres, huge informal labor market, lack of public policy and response in time, lack of information and providing citizens with the proper information about situation and policies. Thus, the question for India after lockdown post-May was either to constrain the virus or save lives or save them from starvation and insecurity. The humanitarian crisis, COVID-19 is exacerbating the inequalities faced by individuals and families in humanitarian crisis. With the national government looking inward and putting their own citizens first, people in need of humanitarian assistance are being neglected. As the COVID-19 pandemic has spread, governments worldwide have introduced travel restriction, inadvertently stopping aid workers from traveling and thereby hampering human responses. And interruption of aid means even less access to soap and water, which is important for controlling the spread of COVID-19. Other non-pharmaceutical interventions, physical distancing, and avoiding crowds and indoor spaces are unsuitable in many humanitarian settings. Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, for example, has a population density of 40,000 people per square kilometer, 40 times more than the country as a whole. Isolating confirmed cases is extremely difficult under these circumstances. And personal protective equipment is often difficult to obtain because countries have introduced export restrictions. In India, the internal migrant workers are employed as low-paid casual workers in informal sectors, increasing their vulnerability. 78% of them did not even get paid during the lockdown, while almost none received cash aid and rations from the agencies. Basic labor laws have been suspended in many states owing to demand from different lobbies, which further deepened the humanitarian crisis. As a result, India witnessed the second largest mass migration in its history after the partition of India due to this virus. The out-of-pocket expenditure for healthcare has already exhausted a large proportion of household incomes, pushing them further into poverty. This ultimately creating economic inequality in the society, both income equality and class inequality, as white-collar workers got paid as usual, while the casual laborers didn't. The rich are using their savings to somehow manage their livelihoods, while the poor are suffering from starvation and malnutrition. The lives of middle-income persons are even more pathetic. They can neither take the advantage of public distribution system out of dignity and shame, nor can arrange some means for sustaining quality of life. Thus, immense financial strain is causing emotional distress of many. Access to education has become more skewed, which might lead to more dropouts. To end with challenges and way forward. The demand-supply problem which have erupted in recent times are no longer old classical problems, which have made macroeconomists rethink about how to deal and explain these problems. Infusing liquidity in the system may not work, since there is a lot of uncertainty about future job markets and financial markets now, which have made sharp changes in human behavior. These structural breaks cannot be solved with the traditional policy-making insights. Instead, innovative mechanisms are needed to be devised with a holistic outlook to bring back everyone on track. Absence of proper healthcare system with respect to quality as well as coverage has been quite evident in recent times. So the need for wide coverage of the healthcare in every aspect is also important in saving lives and livelihoods of the people. And the inequality to access to basic social capital is to be removed through proper public provisions. Besides, public action and public trust on it, as well as complementary actions from public, are important to contain it. The proper example was shown by Kerala, as they had all these items present which helped them to refrain the spread of virus. The precarious situation of the economy, especially of the financial sector, and the economy's dependence on informal labor, lockdowns, and other social distancing measures are turning out to be hugely disruptive. So policymakers need to be prepared to scale up the response as the events unfold so as to minimize the impact of the shock on both the formal and informal sectors and pave the way for a sustained recovery. At the same time, they must ensure that the responses remain enshrined in a rules-based framework and limit the exercise of discretion in order to avoid long-term damage to the economy. We are all trying our level best to adapt ourselves in this new normal mode in search for a better future in 2020. So thank you very much. Wish you all the best. May God bless you.
Thank you, respected Father, for your insightful words. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to introduce to you our first speaker, Professor Muhammad Yunus, a renowned global personality and a Nobel Peace Laureate. Professor Yunus is the father of social business and microcredit and is the founder of Grameen Bank alongside more than 50 other companies in Bangladesh on account of his pioneering work for the socio-economic development of the poor. Well known for his constant innovation and enterprise, the Fortune magazine has described him as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time. In 2006, Professor Yunus and Grameen Bank were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He is the recipient of 61 honorary degrees from universities across 24 countries and 136 awards from 33 countries, including state honors from 10 countries. Professor Yunus is one of only 7 individuals to have received the Nobel Peace Prize, the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the United States Congressional Gold Medal. He has appeared on the cover of Time Magazine, Newsweek, and Forbes Magazine. We are deeply honored to have you with us here today, Professor. Please note that Professor Yunus's address will be followed by an interactive session, so the audience is requested to type in their questions in the comments. I now invite Dr. Partha Pratim Ghosh, Senior Faculty Member of the Department of Economics and Coordinator of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, to welcome Professor Yunus.
Thank you, Deep. It is indeed a privilege to welcome amongst us this afternoon Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, who has been hailed by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee as banker to the poor. Professor has been fueled by the belief that credit is a fundamental human right, and that is exactly what shaped his objective function, namely to help poor people escape from poverty by providing loans on terms suitable to them and by teaching them a few sound financial principles so they could help themselves. Sir, we are eager to hear your views on the COVID-19 pandemic, lives and livelihoods and challenges. Please come over, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you. And we are very short distance apart from each other. And we're very happy that we could get in touch to this Zoom technology. What I will try to do is have just a chat on the work that we do and worries that we have right now because of the pandemic and the prospect that we see for the future. All of us go through the same process. Every day we see the terrible things happening. Pandemic is extending itself. Lots of people dying out of pandemic, and many more to follow that path. Still, we don't have much in our hand to protect ourselves from this pandemic. What I come up again and again, this is a great learning process for us because we knew a lot of things from our previous experiences, bits and pieces. We know they exist, the terrible things in our societies that exist. But we forget it very quickly because it doesn't appear in front of us in so vividly. What Corona has done, what the pandemic has done, made everything visible. It brought us all the weaknesses of our society, all the failures through our system. It brought us right in front of us. We cannot avoid seeing them and feeling terrified by them. So that's a good lesson that we didn't see them. They were hiding away in our societies. We got used to it. And suddenly we're shaken up. Everything is visible. Visualization is very simple. We cannot walk out of it. So that's a big thing that we have achieved from the pandemic. And another thing that comes to my mind through this Now it's very recent. This is the vaccine, because we can finish this pandemic with the availability of widespread availability of vaccines. And we are assured that the vaccine is coming, and good quality, safe vaccines will be available. What again terrifies me and fits into all the other terrifying scenario that we see during the pandemic. How selfish we get, the whole world gets, and it demonstrates its selfishness in such a massive way when it comes to the lives of the people, saving lives of the people to the vaccines. Because the rich countries are so anxious and so aggressive in getting hold of these vaccines. They are the one to get it. They don't care whether other countries get it or not. So you see news every day in the newspaper that how much money is paid to a certain company to supply all the initial production to a certain country. United States have been paying left and right to every single vaccine company to contract out all the production of the company. So if you look around all the top companies, actually there are only a handful of companies which will be producing vaccines anyway. But the productions are bought off. And with the massive expenses, they will be paying to these companies. And the companies are very happy because they will be making super profit out of it. And they don't care whether other countries, non-rich countries, will have ever any access to these vaccines. So about 31% of the entire population will have access to these vaccines because they belong to the rich countries. And the remaining 39% or 49%, they will not have any vaccines for themselves. So this is a scenario that you have in the picture. Sorry, 31 to 69% and so on. There will be people who will not have access to vaccines at all. No way they can reach out to them because rich countries have grabbed them. So again, the ugly aspect of profit maximization and the market economy shows up when it comes to the lives of the millions of people around the world, that such a number of people who will be missing out from the whole availability of vaccines. Assurances are given, yes, we'll give you some. Companies assure that we'll give you some. But that's more of a token thing. The policy-wise, they are not in the picture. So we are deprived from that. And I have been pointing it out several months now, that, and I made a global appeal with support from many dignitaries around the world, made an appeal to declare this vaccine, corona vaccine, as a common good, as a global common good. That this is something which cannot be owned by anybody. The patent of these vaccines cannot be owned by anybody. Any particularly commercial interest cannot buy off the patent for that or own this patent of that. The reason we appeal to that, because unless we do that, other companies around the world, there are lots of pharmaceutical companies around the world, but it will be extremely difficult for them to produce it because this patent will be owned by big companies and they will be charging enormous cost to give you the license to produce it. So that will discourage the local production. So I said, if you make this as a global common good, then there is no commercial owner. Anybody can take this and produce it anywhere in the world. There's a lot of, as I said, a lot of pharmaceutical companies around the world who do that locally, rather than wait for big companies in Europe or USA to produce it. And then finally we get this little streak of movement coming to us, getting these vaccines for our use. And that will be a long time. Maybe they will send it a little bit to us, to the poor countries around the world, but it will be too late. By this time, lots of people will lose their life. If you can produce locally, then the scenario changes completely. Then it's available, it's local, you can just make a distribution and so on. So this is an issue. And when we talk about the global common good, this is not something new. This is actually an old idea. We're just simply refreshing it, bringing it up in front of everybody else. Polio vaccine. Polio vaccine was made a common good. The inventor of the polio vaccine, he himself declared that this will be a people's vaccine. I should not be the owner of this patent, or nobody else should be the owner of this patent. Anybody wants to produce it can produce it. It doesn't have to pay anybody anything for production of it. So we are simply talking about the continuation of the tradition. It's already there. And polio vaccine, because of the availability of polio vaccine, today we have come to a stage where polio is completely eliminated from the whole world because of that vaccine. Vaccination has stopped us. So that can happen in the case of corona vaccine too, make it global common good. If we don't have that common good and not availability in the local production, through local production, what will happen? Two things will happen. Poorer countries, poorer people will be left out from that. People will die. Another thing will happen. Lots of companies will be producing fake vaccines. The market will be flooded with fake vaccines. Since it's about life, people will be desperate to get to that vaccine. When you're desperate, it becomes another opportunity for profit makers to take advantage of the situation and make produce lookalike fake vaccines and make lots of money in exchange of the deceiving people and pushing them to death because they feel they have the vaccines, they will free, and they will cut in the trap of the virus and die. So this is another parallel thought. So this is another example of what we do, what worries me. The other part that I would like to share with you about my worry is about how eager all countries have become right from the beginning since coronavirus, COVID-19 keep coming to us, to rush back to the economy where we are coming from. We don't like the way economy collapsed, economic engine completely shut down, and people are nervous about it, and for good reasons. So all the countries, all the governments of the world are trying to jumpstart this and go back as quickly as possible to the point where we left off by the end of last year in December. From January on, the virus started spreading. It became global within 100 days. Now it's the whole world under its thumb. But we want to go back to the point that we are coming from at the end of the December last year. And I raised the question, should we be eager to go back? Is it worth going back? Why should we go back from where we are coming? I said, the failure that has been pointed out by the coronavirus, and also the circumstances that it has created, that the system that we are following is absolutely a wrong system. The result of that system has created a world which has made it absolutely a world of death for a human being on this planet. So that's the engine that we created. If you imagine a train where all the people in the world is riding this train, and train is running very fast and heading for death. And this is the economic machine that we built, the train, which is taking us to our ultimate death. Why do I say so? It's very simple, because all of us feel the same way. It's nothing to do lots of new research for that. First of all is the global warming. We are told again and again, global warming make this world unlivable for human being, and we all agree on that. Scientists have persuaded us. Each day is getting worse, global warming becoming worse and worse. Who created this global warming? Of course, the economic machine that we built, that's the one that created this global warming. And that's the train that I was talking about. That train, which is taking us to our death. And global warming is a death. The countdown has begun. Very soon, we'll finish our part in this planet. We'll be gone. And it's not about hundreds of years. It's not about 50 years or so. It's just a couple of decades or 3 decades, something like that. We know that 1.5 degrees Celsius, by the time we get there, we are almost done. And if we don't do anything yet, 2 degrees Celsius is the last point that we can make it. And by that time, the game is over. We are finished on this planet. And the time is very close. So the countdown is here. So we should be rather grateful to pandemic because it has stopped the train. Now the train cannot go to the death. We are rushing to the death. And when people are saying that, no, let's get back as quickly as possible, make the engine, start the engine again and go back to the point that we were in. I said, look, you are now doing the other way. You should be stopping, you should be grateful to the pandemic that you stopped the train. Now you want to restart the train to go back to your death. I said, it's a suicidal thing. Why do you want to commit suicide? It's very clear that we don't want to go back to that planet, to that world that waits for our death. So this is the point that should we go back to where we're coming from? Now that Corona has stopped the train, should we get out of the train and then say, great escape. Now let's build another train, go another direction. Not this direction is a death trap. We don't want to go that way. It's not only global warming, alongside of the global warming, which is a creation of the economy that we built, it's not coming from God or anybody else. We created it, you and me and everybody else together, because of the wrong thinking, wrong designing, wrong things that we learned from the school, from our textbooks, from our theoreticians. They created the machine to take us to the death. And that's what we're following. And that theory will kill us. We don't want to follow that theory. Not only the global warming, another thing which is waiting for us to kill us when we go back to that point is the extreme wealth concentration. All the wealth of the world is concentrated in few hands. Almost you can say 1% of the population of the world owns 99% of the wealth of the world, entire world. 1% owning 99% of the world. What kind of economy is that? This cannot be an economy. This is a stupid thing to do, such a thing. So, but we are following it. We are enjoying it. We don't care because we want to stay in our own comfort zone. We know it's happening, but we don't want to leave our comfort zone. We don't want to do that. I said it's like people who are addicted. They know it's bad. The addiction, that whatever addiction you have is bad, but you don't want to get out of it. So you know how to get out of it, but you don't want to get out of it because you're in your comfort zone. You know that this is terrible for you. It may cause death. It may cause terrible things for yourself, your family, and everything. You know everything, and you know how to get out of it, but you don't do that. So we are like those addicted person, the whole planet. We know that we are committing ourselves for an ultimate disaster, but we don't want to do anything about it. We just take it easy, and we want to rush back to it because we are missing it. Corona has stopped, we're missing it. I said, let's wake up. Wake up from the addiction that we got so that we can go to another direction. So one is the global warming, another is wealth concentration, an ugly way of wealth concentration. It's like your body has all the blood circulated around your body. Suppose your body starts malfunctioning, all the blood of your body comes to one of your fingertips. And you call it a very healthy body. It's not healthy. It's just a disaster. That's what is happening to the economy of the world. All the wealth of the world is in your fingertip. And the entire body of the economy is out of the blood. So this is going to collapse very soon. And it will not even collapse, it will explode. Explode in anger, explode in political ways, explode in economic way. So the whole society will fall apart. And that's again counting days. It's a matter of days, because this wealth concentration is a continuous process. It's not something happened and it stopped. It's not like that. The moment we go back to that position, start cranking up the same wealth concentration again. Today, 1% owning 99%. Tomorrow it will be less than 1% owning more than 99%. And what is for future for the humankind? Nothing. So this is a result. Third one, quickly I should mention, is the threat of the artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will quickly replace human being in everything. And that's the direction. And it will happen very fast. It's not about again another 50 years or 100 years. It will happen in 20, 30 years. Human being will be replaced by machines, because machines do better than human beings. Sounds very crazy, and it is crazy. But the question is, if we become surplus on this planet, useless, because we have no use for the planet anymore, machines will do everything. We are such a surplus. And if the machines are smarter than human beings, you think they will tolerate us, those surplus people hanging around in this planet, like a pest creeping around in this planet? And my guess is they will call up their pest control department and say, get rid of these pests, and we'll be out, finish. So I said, I don't want to go back to the world where we'll become surplus. We're at the mercy of other things. And that's not the world I would like to live. So these are the things waiting for us a few years from now. And Corona and the pandemic has given us a chance, train has stopped, to choose another path, go another direction. If you want to go another direction, we have to find a way how to do that. And we have to, before we go the other direction, we have to find out what kind of world we like. This one we don't like. Global warming, wealth concentration, massive unemployment. We don't like anything of that. What is that we like? The reverse of it, of course. The simple thing, we create the reverse world. What will be the reverse world? And I try to explain to myself, or anybody who'd like to listen to me, I said, we can create a world in a reverse way, which will be world of 3 zeros. 0 unemployment, because there'll be no artificial intelligence. We'll be there creating entities of the world. We run this world, we make this world to suit us. So there'll be 0 unemployment, 0 net carbon emission. There'll be no global warming. We'll have a very happy, environment-friendly world, 0 net carbon emission globally. So this is what the kind of world: 0 unemployment, 0 net carbon emission, and 0 wealth concentration. Wealth will not be concentrated. Wealth will be shared by everybody. And that's also possible. These are not unthinkable things. This is simply the designing of the thing that we have done, and do it reverse way. And I give the example of a reverse way how it can be done. That's where my experience come about microcredit, Grameen Bank that we created in Bangladesh. What we did, we just looked at the banking system, how it functions, and we hated it, how it functions. I said, it's absolutely wrong. This dismisses all the people at the very bottom of the world. The bottom 50%, 60% of the people has nothing to do, no connection whatsoever with the banking system. So we created an alternative banking system, a reverse banking system. What we have done, when we hear microcredit, this is what actually we have done. Everything conventional banking do, we do the opposite. How? They go to the rich, we go to the poor. Reverse. They go to men, we go to women. Reverse. They go to the city center to do their business, we go to the remote villages. So our work is always in the villages. Again, kind of defying the methodology given by the conventional businesses, that you have to be in the city center, you have to run your business with the city, with the big folks, with the rich people. We reverse everything. They want collateral. Nothing can be done in the conventional banking system without collateral. They say, you take your money and run away. And So you bring your lawyer, you bring your possessions, tie it all up, sign it all up so that I can control all your assets. And then I give you money against it because I don't trust you. So we created an entire banking system on the basis of trust. No collateral whatsoever. We lend out billions of dollars a year, but not a single penny of collateral needed. And they said, oh my God, this is collapse. We are doing it for 42 years now. And it's a now global phenomenon in India, in West Bengal, everywhere in India, the microcredit works without collateral. So today, everybody knows it works. But when we began, we said, this is a crazy thing. So we have to do crazy things. We have to defy things. We have to undo the things we do. Now we have business to make money. That's the concept. Human beings are defined in economics as someone who's driven by self-interest. We started defining human beings differently. We said human beings, yes, are driven by self-interest, but much more than self-interest is driven by common interest. But the common interest part is completely dismissed from the traditional economics. They don't consider that. They think it's all about self-interest. Profit maximization is translated in profit maximization. In the process, they made all human beings on this planet as some kind of money-making machines. We are no longer human beings anymore. So we want to rediscover ourselves as a human being. And we create a separate kind of business. If we do the common interest is a kind of goal for us, and that's what drives us, we create a new kind of business. Business to solve common problems. Rather than make money for ourselves, we become problem solver, which we are genuinely. That's how human beings are all produced. They are born as a problem solver. That's how we survived on this planet, by solving problems. Now we forgot. We became workers for the companies and factories and the whatever you hire for us. I said, that's a wrong direction. I tell the young people, we are not job seekers, we are job creators. We are entrepreneurs. We are born as basically all human beings are entrepreneurs. But the traditional economic theory taught us, no, we have to work for somebody. I said, no, that's not true. Human beings are not born to work for anybody. They're independent person. They're creative person. There are endless creativity inside of each one of us. But the moment you take a job, your creativity is finished. Because the first condition of job, you have to follow orders. You cannot be a creative person if you follow orders. Creativity is about defiance. You define the norms, you define the orders from anybody else. You create yourself. And that's what human beings are. And each one of us, you, me, everybody around the world, the little kids on the street, they're all endowed with unlimited creative power. That's what we are packed with when we come to this planet. But our economic wrong thinking keeps us blocked inside of us. We cannot dig it out. So we remain unknown to each of us. As an individual, we remain unknown to us because society and our economic system, our education system never gave us an opportunity to dig into ourselves and find out, explore ourselves. What are the limits that I have in my life? And discover that limit. In the process, discover myself. That's what the human beings are all about. So we created another kind of business, again, defiance of the conventional thinking of maximization of profit. We created a business not to make profit, not to make personal profit. And we call it social business. So we have the reversal again, like in banking, we created reverse banking. We created reverse banking, reverse business. The conventional business is a maximization of profit. In reverse business is a zero personal profit. Company makes profit, profit is plowed back into the company, but the company's objective is to solve collective problems, not making anybody's personal money. Suddenly we discover something else. All the problem of the world can be solved. And all those problems of global warming, all the problem of wealth concentration, and all the problems of unemployment can be solved the moment you discover yourself as human. So the methodology is known to us. It's not unknown. All we have to do, make up our mind. First, now Corona has given an opportunity to decide, and let's decide, we are not going to go back. We don't want to go back to the death. We go to a new life, create a new world. That's our destination. Thank you very much.
Professor, having you grace this webinar is truly a moment of great pride for the Department of Economics and St. Xavier's College. Thank you for enlightening us with your perspective. I now invite Sumedha Ghosh and Arya Roy Bardhan to take over the proceedings of the interactive session.
As you rightly said, COVID pointed out many drawbacks. Do you think that this pandemic spurs up the requirement of a universal basic income which will benefit us all in the future?
Well, it depends on what you think about the future. I don't see human future depends on being beggars. Universal basic income to me sounds like begging. Somebody gives you money free because you don't earn yourself. So that's what the beggars do. They can't earn money, so somebody has to pay them for survival. It's a kind of your charity. So I don't want to see a human society depending on charity. Human society, as I was explaining a little bit before, human being is packed with unlimited creative capacity. It contributes to the society. It doesn't take things from the society. It contributes to the society. And I said human beings are entrepreneurs. They are problem solvers. They are not problem themselves. They are problem solvers. That's how our past is, hundreds of thousands of years or a million years that we are on this planet. We have overcome all the difficulties of this planet by our creative ways of doing things. We survived and we flourished because we are go-getters, and that's what we became. That's our identity. We are go-getters. We are problem solvers. We are entrepreneurs. So that's not the one that in our history, we are waiting for somebody to give us charity and for finding food. Finding food, wherever you see them, even today it exists, like welfare payments or subsidy payments. These are deviation from the norm. This is not the system this is the weaknesses of the system, sickness of the system, that we have to give somebody a donation. One way I have been talking about saying, when people ask me what is poverty, one thing I try to identify immediately, I said, poverty is not created by people. It's not created by poor people. Poverty is created by our thinking, but created by the system that we built through our own wrong thinking. That created the poverty. So poverty is not in the person. Poverty is in the thinking of the theories behind which behind the theories that we practice. So that's sort of poverty. So basic income completely is a misfit to what I think. So I would strongly resist myself in going in that direction. I would say this is something to collapse of the economic as a human being, as a creative human being. I wouldn't go to that path.
So the pandemic has thrown the entire labor force into a quandary. How can we find a way to reinstate the jobs along with skill development, which is of the essence in a post-COVID environment?
Yeah, this is another revelation that I was talking about, that all the bad things that we do in the society revealed by the corona pandemic. And that came out very clearly in India, Bangladesh, when millions of people were walking home, lost their jobs in the cities, They couldn't pay their rent, they couldn't buy their food, they don't have the savings left for themselves. And there's no transportations available because of the lockdown. So they didn't wait, they just started walking 100 miles, hundreds of miles to go home. And that raises the very basic question, why millions of people have to do that? Because economic machine couldn't continue in the old fashion. So old fashioned machine stopped and suddenly they fell. They were hanging by the nails failed them. They couldn't hang on anymore. They're on the ground. My first question is, why anybody has to go to hundreds of miles to find survival livelihood? Why we made the economic system in such a way that we have to leave our places of birth to find a place where we can find some way of survival, leaving my family, my children, my home, hundreds of miles away? Why couldn't we create an economy where I have the survival livelihood right where I was born? It's possible. It's a thinking process. If I thought that way, I would have done that. But we didn't think about that way. We designed an economic system which is city-centric. We imagine a city. Is it a fashionable thing in our mind to say everything should be in one place? Everything we wanted to place in one place, we call it city. And we said everybody has to come to the city to find a survival livelihood. You cannot do it in your village. And I find it very strange. You know, all the people from the villages, they have to come to the city to find some job, some livelihood, so that they can send home some money so that their families in the villages can survive with this little money. And they have to live in the slums in the most difficult ways. And then another funny thing, you have to bring all the inputs, all the raw materials, the agricultural inputs from the villages to come to the city to be processed, to become attractive consumer products and then go back to all over the country. I said, that's very funny. You had it right in the village. So why didn't you use the people in the village to transform those raw materials right in the village and send it to consumer goods all over the world? Why do you have to bring people and the raw materials in another place, make all the expenses involved? It's just wrong thinking. And rural areas have to become the kind of backyard for the for the city economy. I said, that's not true. Village economy, rural economy could be as strong an economy as anywhere else because they have the people, they have the raw materials, they have everything. In the past, they may have some excuses to bring it to the city because they said there's no infrastructure in the villages. You don't have electricity, you have no communication, you have not this, blah, blah, blah. Today, we have everything. We have the communication, we have the transportation, we have the roads, we have the telephones, internet, everywhere. So look at the simple example of call centers. You have a huge building up filled with young people sitting in the kiosk, answering questions on the phone, people asking questions from USA or some other country. You are here answering their questions and so on, make a living. And where these young people come from? They come from the villages. Who do they answer these questions from? They answer the question from the USA. How do they do it? Because of the technology. So I said, why don't these young people live in the village with a clean air, nice place, and stay with their families and answer their question right there? Why do they come to the city? It's again wrong thinking. So you go one after another. If you imagine the rural economy as an independent economy, where you have to find options for people to make their own livelihood right there, so that you can walk to your work if you want to work out of your own home. You don't have to rent a place for doing there because this is the traditional place you are born, and you are there. You are comfortable. You leave your place. So this is one part of it that I try to mention, that this is something. And economists do very funny things. They call these people who lost their jobs, lost their income, lost their activities of selling things, producing things, selling on the roadside, call them informal sector. This informal sector is as big as 70% of the population of the country. Imagine 70% of the population of India. These are informal sector. 70% of the population of Bangladesh. These are informal sector. Why do they call it informal sector? Because they say we don't know anything about it. They have to come to the formal sector to take a job. Once they take a job, then we have lots of ideas to help them. Until then, we have nothing to do. They are on their own. I said, the fact that they are on their own is a tremendous power. You ignore that power. If you have just changed the name informal sector, you call them micro entrepreneur sector, suddenly you see it's a powerhouse. You ignore the powerhouse. They do things by using their own creative power. You are interested in giving orders, slavery, to take a job. You're not respecting the entrepreneurial capacity of these people, 70% of the population of the people. If you recognize them as an entrepreneurial sector, then first thing you have to do is to create a financial system to support them so that they don't feel victims to the loan shark. Because if they're entrepreneur, micro-entrepreneurs, they're all victims of loan sharks. That's how they survive. And loan sharks take away everything they earn. You have not done a thing. You have not lifted a finger to change that. So I said, why don't you recognize them as a micro-entrepreneur sector? Create micro-entrepreneurial bank as a separate bank. This is a rural bank, like Grameen Bank. And their headquarters will be in the village, not in the city. So everything has to be city center. You forget that city center. You made a mistake and created misery for so many people. And that banking system should be social business micro-entrepreneurial bank. It's not personal money-making business. Grameen is a social business. It's not intended to make money from me or anybody else. It's dedicated to solve a common problem. People don't have access to finance. They created an opportunity for creating finance. And suddenly you see this thriving micro-entrepreneur sector is booming and changing the whole economy. 70% of Indian population is no job. I said, then you have a Ministry of Labor because they're in the formal labor. You have no ministry for the micro-entrepreneur sector, huge micro-entrepreneur sector, but you have no ministry. The first thing to do, you create a Ministry of Micro-Entrepreneurs. And then make policies, make institutions and everything. Laborers have an institution, labor have policies, labor have rights, but the micro-entrepreneurs don't. They can be thrown out of your street anytime police comes to kick them out. They're nowhere. They have no place. Why? They're entrepreneurs. Treat them with respect. Give them opportunity, give them authority, give them the facility, the state recognized facility for them. And then they will thrive and make all the thing happen. Because all the capacity is inside the person. The same capacity, whether you're born in the street or you're born in the palace of a king, human capacity inside the person is the same. That same creative power. Just because they're selling things in the roadside doesn't mean they are less creative than the big guy on the top of the pyramid of the entrepreneur sector, multi-billion-dollar business, and the micro-entrepreneurial business. There's no difference between the two. Same entrepreneurial capacity. So these are the changes that you have to make as we go along. It's an all problem of the thinker.
Thank you, Professor, for giving us the opportunity to interact with you. I now invite Dr. Shamrat Roy, HOD Economics, Department of Commerce Morning, Coordinator, PhD Programs and Net and Set Guidance Center to deliver the thanks.
On the behalf of Father Rector, Father Jairaj Veluswamy, Father Dominic Savio, Principal, St. Xavier's College, Autonomous, Kolkata, and Postgraduate Department of Economics, it is my privilege to proceed for the Thanksgiving. It is our honor and prestige for such an esteemed institution of a rich legacy to have as one of the esteemed speakers of today, Dr. Muhammad Yunus. He has been a Nobel laureate, chairman of Yunus Centre Bangladesh, and with his motivating words, we are enlightened, we are enriched. He has given us the right path to take away of these trying times, to strive for something better in the name of livelihood, humanity, and also looking for a better new world to come up. A more unequal world in the pre-COVID to the more equal world that we can come up with his motivating speech. Thank you, sir, for your gracious presence. I am also thankful to Mr. Shamir Ahmad, Assistant Program Officer, Yunus Centre Bangladesh, with whom we have been communicating from the month of July and making it a successful program as of today. So thank you, sir, for your gracious presence. And at the end, but not the least, I'm very much thankful to our principal, Reverend Dr. Dominic Savio, for his enlightened keynote address and his motivational words as always with us. Thank you, Father. So on the behalf of the St. Xavier's College, it is my privilege and honor to offer this vote of thanks. Thank you, sir, for your presence. Once again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Delighted to be with you. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye then. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
We are graced by the presence of another eminent personality, Dr. Raghabendra Chattopadhyay. Professor Chattopadhyay is a senior academician who has taught public policy and management at the prestigious Indian Institute of Management in Calcutta for over 30 years. After his retirement, he is still engaged in teaching and actively pursues economic research. He is still engaged in teaching and actively pursues economic research as a member of the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab. Being a renowned scholar, his research includes local self-government and empowerment of women, public policy and management, development, and the state's role in social sector, including adult and elementary education in India, political economy of development, and poverty eradication through self-sustaining economic programs. His past publications include a paper titled Women as Policy Makers, Evidence from a Randomized Policy Experiment in India with Professor Esther Duflo, and evaluations such as influencing the provision of social services through mandated female representation in policy making in India, efficiency and rent seeking in local self-government in India, and perceptions of female leaders in India. His pioneering work has set him apart in the world of academia. Thank you, Professor, for joining us today. Professor Chattopadhyay's address will be followed by an interactive session, so the audience is requested to type in their questions in the comment section. I now invite Dr. Ranjan Nag, Senior Faculty Member of the Department of Economics, to welcome Professor Chattopadhyay.
Thank you, Priya. Priya has rightly and nicely covered many diverse dimensions of research work of Professor Raghabendra Chattopadhyay. I add one more dimension based on my experience as a postgraduate student of Calcutta University way back in the 1990s. Sir taught us Indian economy. He is a very gifted, remarkably gifted, outstanding teacher. He taught us the complex dimensions of Indian economic planning, genesis of planning, starting from the Bombay Plan. He has discussed issues pertaining to many policy debates, including land reform, green revolution, the role of credit, and the like. I remember those classes. I have the fond memories of those classes. We used to interact with each other, particularly in Arup Mollik's room. Professor Arup Mollik died. Anyway, so, sir, on behalf of the St. Xavier's College, Department of Economics, I invite you, I welcome you, sir. Please deliver your address. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah, thanks, Ranjan. You know, this is an advantage you have. You know, when you grow old, you leave students here and there who are ready to speak on behalf of you. But I'm in a dilemma now. See what Professor Yunus has done to your question regarding universal basic income. Makes actually other discussions on the economic impacts of this COVID almost redundant. See, this is also one problem that you face when you face great thinkers. Long ago, I read a book by Aldous Huxley called The Island. It's not a very commonly read book. I just came across it, most probably in St. Xavier's library itself. I was a student. I started my college life in St. Xavier's College, although I didn't end it there. Anyway, now the storyline of that book was basically based on Gandhi's village community. Actually showed how, that kind of a village community would not be able to survive surrounded by the urban, city-based or modern societies. It would be crushed by the modern societies. That was Huxley's worries about the possibility of, about the possible future outcome of Gandhi's ventures. Now, Professor Yunus is a great thinker, a great dreamer, but the question of UBI, for example, is much more, it's narrow focused, but actually also it is related to the current problems that the world is facing, particularly the populous countries like ours are facing due to the calamity created by the COVID-19. If you look at the world economies, see Thomas Piketty in his Capital in the 21st Century, which is a seminal work, he showed how global capitalism was creating increasing economic disparities, concentrating wealth in fewer hands, creating huge difference within the communities, between human and human. And the inequality that's thus created may lead to a situation where the structure itself may be unable to keep itself out. Now, that kind of issues are what, although of a narrow focus, are much more realistic to discuss, because it can then give you some way, short run, to come out of the calamities without large loss of human lives. If you look at last 6 months or so, hundreds and thousands of lives have been sacrificed. Hundreds of thousands of people have walked miles to get back to their home and dying on the roadside. Now, this is a much more immediate issue and requires much more concentrated application of mind to find out ways to come out of it. To me, the universal basic income is related to that issue. It's not giving alms to beggars. Sorry, I don't think UBI should be considered as alms. UBI should be considered as a legitimate demand, as a legitimate ownership that the poor are being denied. They deserve to have a basic. Any human being deserve to be alive, and it's constitutionally it's given that it's fundamental. It's one of the fundamental rights, human lives, and whatever is required to sustain human life, thus should be constitutionally given to human being. Now, there are issues, of course, that are discussed, that you find that despite increasing demand for universal basic income coming from different branches of economists, just if you look at today's newspaper, for example, I was reading Telegraph, there are at least on 3 occasions, this issue has come in the newspaper. Professor Raghuram Rajan has again reiterated why Government of India should look into this demand for UBI and how it is related to overall future of our economies. The economy, if you go back to Piketty's book, the concentration of capital in so few hands. If you look at India, for example, 1% of Indian population holds 42.5% of India's national wealth. Well, actually, my friend Professor Anup Sinha has a very good article published in op-ed published in Telegraph itself, which discusses issues related issues. So I'm not going to repeat the data because it's so easily available today. But if you look at the data, you'll find that it's so dramatically concentrated in fewer hands. And it's increasingly, the tendency is increasingly towards that. Fewer and fewer hands, and the larger number of people are turning into paupers. Paupers in the sense of income, but not paupers in the sense of their ability to contribute to the wealth of the country. We talk about that miles and miles that these people, our poor, the migratory labor who had gone from West Bengal or Bihar or UP to Western India or Southern India in search of work and had to leave their workplace because of the lockdowns. You could also probably recall a very interesting incident in Karnataka, in Bangalore and around. There, the investors in housing industry was forcefully stopping the migrants from leaving Bangalore and going homewards, because they were worried that if these people went home in UP, Bihar or West Bengal, Bangalore housing industry might not be able to reopen itself once they can handle the lockdown. The migration might lead to huge dearth of labor, and infrastructure remains pretty labor intensive. Without labor force, they cannot reopen themselves. Now, but that's a very important point that we often miss, that it's in the interest of the investors, the capitalists themselves, that they might want to keep the workers. Now, the way that the lockdown had created a situation where nobody could really plan about how to handle this calamity, leading to such migration, etc. But now if you look at it, the lockdowns have been withdrawn largely and are being withdrawn, yet the economy is not really picking up. Yes, if you look at automobile industry, there are very slight but positive development. Now, so far as the two-wheelers are concerned, for example, people are buying two-wheelers, almost large number, quite a substantially large number of them, almost per force, because they don't want to endanger their life by traveling in crowded public transport system to go to their work. So two-wheeler has become a necessity and not a luxury. Car, yes, car is not so much, the four-wheelers are not so much necessities. And it also means that there are people who are ready, who has money, who has savings to spend in those four-wheelers. But these are very sporadic instances which may not be able to encourage us in thinking that we are coming out of that bog that has been created by this calamity. A very substantial, a very large part of our economic activities are in the so-called unorganized sector. It's in the MSME, in the small, particularly in the small and the unorganized sector, that the economy thrives. It's not just in India. If you look at European economies, for example, Germany, if I recall correctly, more than 85% of their employment and income generation come from unorganized sector, from that MSME basically, well, which we brought, a large part of which we term as unorganized sector. Now, to revive this sector, which has gone to almost ashes, is a stupendous task. It would require increasing demand generation. Unless there are buyers, unless there are ready users of the products of this unorganized sector, that sector will not revive, will not be able to revive. And without that revival, the economy will not be able to revive. Economic revival will not be just with the opening up of these large industries, highly automated, catering to the need of the better economic categories of the population. It would keep itself limited to that sector, and that will not create a capitalist revival, a market revival, really. The concept of universal basic income, of course, it's in the broad picture of a blissful future that great thinkers like Professor Yunus could encourage us with. But for the minnows, who have to look into the immediate future, immediate present, and can only try to find out ways and means to find out some amelioration, some comforts to be given to fellow travelers. To such people, it remains only dreams unfulfilled. Now, hence we have to perforce discuss the economies as given, where one person can control nearly 50% or more of the wealth of the economy. And 42.5% Anup showed this morning, and bottom 50% has the total wealth, which is less than 3%. Now, in that, the linkage between the top and the bottom would be in terms of the market. And the market would need people to buy goods, buy consumables, buy comforts, buy leisures, and ways and means of enjoying the leisures from the markets. So the demand for such things would also need money in the pocket. And that money in the pocket cannot come so much from the work that people can offer, because the employment cannot pick up given the current scenario. Now, Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, was forgotten for almost now 50 years. Well, at least 40 years if we consider 2008. And it's that crisis which had shaken people to think again of the gentleman who had tried to show how the market can be stabilized, how the market can be recovered when it leaps into a crisis. Now, and the coming out of that crisis, as shown by Keynes, can only be in terms of increasing demand. It cannot be solved by the supply side. I'm not going into the economics of it in detail, but you would have remembered people like Caldo, like Kalachki, some of those Keynesians, like Harold Domar, if I may name them. Since 1970, they were almost thrown out of the libraries. Not resulting to a very happy development of economics, if you ask me. The monetary economics, of course, contributed, the monetarism, of course, contributed to our greater understanding of the economics. Yet, it has left many issues unresolved. Now, that universal basic income, I'm harping on it because, that question really bugged me, that, you see, when it is coming from the new generation and the onus then lies on us to try to give an answer to such queries. And I think that the most important task that the basic income, universal basic income, can do is to help creating demand. If you give people money, particularly to the poorer section of the people, they will use it to buy goods, buy consumables. If you look at the marginal propensity to consume, well, it reminds me of Tyler, I think, who said that workers earn to spend and investors earn to save. Workers spend 80% of their income on consumables, if we consider their marginal propensity to consume as 0.8, which means their multiplier effect is 5. And if the same income goes to the investors, it will lead to some acceleration of the economy because of the investment they'll make, but they will not directly create a very large income generation because the wage income is becoming over the time a lesser and lesser percentage of the total income generated by the investments. So the ability of investments to pull up the economy, the income generated by that investment going to the non-wage earners, to the profit earners, may not be able to solve the problem. We need to lift up the entire economy. The entire market must be brought back to operations. And for that, you need the buyers. And since there is a huge unemployment that has been created by this COVID, that will continue to remain the major problem, how to revive employment. Because without the increase in employment, you cannot increase the demand, you cannot revive the economy. To me, this is the major concern that the world economies, particularly the populous economies in the world, will face. Unfortunately, we are actually far from coming to a conclusion whether to really go by that prescription that the champions of universal basic income are trying to posit. If you look at Europe or other parts of the globe, universal basic incomes are provided either directly by that name or by other names. It's only the populous countries like India, like Brazil, who are going to suffer, but they are such a huge chunk of world global population that unless these economies revive, global economy may not be able to escape the impact of it. I think I'll stop here. I'm probably rambling by now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for illuminating us with your words. It has been fascinating for us to have heard and learned from your insights. I now invite Sumedha Ghosh and Arju Roy Bardhan to take over the proceedings of the interactive session. Over to you, Sumedha.
So this pandemic led us to adopt a tech-induced system of education, which in India is not affordable to all. Do you think this digital divide will drive the problem of illiteracy and unemployment deeper?
Well, illiteracy and education, spread of education, are actually two different domains. When we talk about illiteracy, we talk about very basic 3 R's, isn't it? Reading, writing, and arithmetic, that is. But this splitting the youth and the children in terms of haves and have-nots of smartphone is surely going to create a divide in terms of the spread of education. See, over last 70 years or more, India has been struggling to spread education. Although it's not a very great development to write home about, we have not been a failure. We have been able to spread our education to a greater section of people. Even illiteracy has been reduced to a very large extent. The overall literacy, if I'm not wrong, is more than 78% most probably. Well, around that. And this is definitely going to be affected. Is going to be affected, is going to create fissure within the communities. There are people, there will be children, the adolescents, who would have to miss out on education, not because of their lack of interest, but because of the lack of amenities. You see, it's no more just books and basic interest in education that will suffice for a child to go through education. Now it is the implements which will decide whether a child will be in the midst of education or not. That's the unfortunate part of this calamity again.
Now, the existence of UBI would suggest that the present system discourages employment and traps people in poverty. So how does UBI exist within these programs that we have today, and who will bear the cost of universal basic income?
The cost is not really very high. If you look at, if you just look at the amount of money that is being spent on different relief work, if instead we actually thought in terms of universal basic income, instead of this relief here and there, relief in different names, with a very large cost of that distribution of such reliefs, you would find the difference not unmanageable. So it's basically, it's a point of view, I think. It's a point of view. If we continue to think that universal basic income is giving alms to the poor, I differ. I don't think it's giving alms to the poor. It's actually acknowledging our responsibility to our fellow people. You see, if we consider, I had started by pointing out that if by constitution, life is one of my fundamental rights, then it's the responsibility of the state to see that I have the means for my life. That means I have means of livelihood. If the state cannot provide me with opportunities of employment, there's the onus lies with the state to provide me with that minimum, the basic income, which is necessary for that life. So the costs, the two things. One is the cost of it is actually not unmanageable. Second, the issue of cost should be irrelevant when we are talking about universal basic income. It should be considered as the responsibility of the society to take care of all its members. Yes, I'm very strong about it, sorry.
In your opinion, what would be your best estimate of when and how the economy can recover to its pre-pandemic level of production or prosperity?
I haven't made the calculation at all, but see, it will take, I think, another, I don't see economy really really, coming out before 2022, because the way it's going, we are all now are scared that we are again going into a storm. A new storm is probably coming. If you look at Eastern India, the Durga Puja itself will probably create a new storm. If Kerala experiences any indication, the Pongal there, the way it invited back the COVID, the SARS-2, the COVID-19, it is going to be a younger colleague of mine was very impressed that I am so optimistic that it will come by 2022. Well, it is an optimistic, hope. Actually, it's not an estimate; it's a hope that we may be able to come out of this, because by then, hopefully, we'll get the vaccinations, etc. So, and what would be the cost of it? I'm sorry, I don't have any estimate.
You mentioned Keynes in your discussion, but do you think the Keynesian way of demand-driven growth is really what we need to be looking at to be able to recover from this pandemic?
Yes, of all the ways and means of getting out of a crisis from 1929, it has been very well established that you do not have a supply side solution to get out of the crisis. You have to generate demand, which can then help supply side. Unless you can generate demand, and where that Keynesian emphasis that if necessary, the government should pay to dig up holes and pay to cover the holes. You create demand without create supply related to it. That means you pay in non-productive income, because your main problem is that your given production are not being sold. You don't have buyers for the goods that you can produce. Your supply is just creating inventories. So it is a supply side. If you look at all the crises for almost 100 years now, you cannot find a single crisis where you could have a solution without creating some demand, increase in demand artificially. Any large crisis that you talk about. Well, the war itself can be such a problem solver by creating demand where your productions are immediately destroyed. You produce to destroy. In the process, you create new income, so new demand, and demand unfulfilled so long as the war goes. I don't think we want such solution, but even 2008 crisis, if you recall, $2 trillion were poured into the banks by President Obama, which helped the banks to solve the problems. There were economists, there were journalists, there were filmmakers who all had castigated Obama, that instead of putting that $2 or $3 trillion to the banks, even if only a small percentage of that relief he would have sent directly to the homes of the destitutes, the American economy would probably recover much faster. But nonetheless, it had to remain a demand creation. You need to create demand to absorb your supply and create situation for new supplies to come in. Thanks.
In the present context, what would your assessment be of the role of fiscal deficit? In this context, do you think we should adhere to the FRBM Act of 2003?
It's not an issue. You see, it's not an issue. That's a bogey about this deficit financing. It's a web tool in the hand of IMF or World Bank. It had remained. Now even they are not so bothered. Some deficit financing. I'm not saying that forget about your budget mechanism and your control over your finance. I'm not saying that, but that bogey of deficit finance, it's just a bogey. If you can use some deficit financing to create new demand to rejuvenate your economy, that excess is very easily absorbed by the economy. There have been many instances to show that that's not a big deal at all. But well, it will remain a difference of opinion, Sumedha. I don't think we'll come to a conclusion in this discussion.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your time and the opportunity for us to interact with you. This has been a very enriching experience for all of us, especially for us economics students. I now invite Dr. Shashwati Chaudhary, Senior Faculty Member of the Postgraduate Department of Economics and Department of Commerce and Business Administration, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Deep. The question that has been lurking in all our minds are the mitigation efforts in the form of social distancing resulting in a restriction of economic activity and the mobility of the people undertaken to slow the spread of COVID-19 worth the economic cost? It's a question that has been asked in all countries affected by the pandemic, as the huge economic costs of the mitigation efforts are becoming obvious. The main benefit of the mitigation efforts comes from the lives saved. But is it also taking a toll on their livelihoods? The just concluded webinar on the lives, livelihoods, and challenges in the context of the COVID pandemic have lived up to the expectations and the buzz generated around it. On behalf of Father Rector, Father Jairaj Veluswamy, and Father Principal Dr. Dominic Savio, I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries who have made it convenient to attend this webinar organized by the Postgraduate Department of Economics of St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, in collaboration with the Yunus Centre Bangladesh. The spirit of today's webinar was set in the right note by none other than our principal, Reverend Father Dr. Dominic Savio, with his keynote address. We are deeply grateful to Father for an enlightening speech. His address was unique, as always, because of the novelty of ideas as well as his style. His unswerving support, guidance, and leadership have always inspired us to think out of the box and build opinions on developmental issues by academic interaction. Father, I thank you for presiding over this webinar and your address. It's a rare and precious opportunity for all of us, especially the student fraternity, to witness our eminent guest, Nobel laureate, Professor Muhammad Yunus, and hear him speak and share his wisdom with us. His powerful and thought-provoking lecture extensively on the conceptual and practical dimension of social business, where the profit and the social benefit coexist, complementing each other would open a new world of business in his own language, a world of 3 zeros in the post-COVID situation. Thank you, sir, for broaching the concept of access to vaccines and how inequality of access would again rear its ugly head. Sir, your promulgation of vaccine as a global common good would again benefit the innumerable poor. We greatly value your contribution in the uplift of the underprivileged and the downtrodden, and express our profound thanks to you for sharing your views with us on a topic of such contemporary relevance. We also thank Professor Raghabendra Chattopadhyay for his valuable speech and outlining the perspectives on the revival scenario in the post-COVID world. Thank you once again, sir, for reiterating the importance of universal basic income scheme in this highly unequal world. Sir, your scholarly insights into these issues would surely set the young minds thinking. I also express my sincere thanks to our rector, Father Jairaj Veluswamy, for being present and for his constant encouragement and support. I express my sincere thanks to the vice principals of the respective departments, Professor Bertram da Silva of the Arts and Science Department, Reverend Father Joseph Kulandai, Commerce Morning Department, Reverend Father Peter Arokiam, Commerce Evening Department, Dr. Charlotte Simpson Vegas, BA Department, and Reverend Father Johnson Padiara, Raghavpur Campus. I also put on record our sincere gratitude to the deans of the respective departments and Dr. Oyon Chandro, Member Secretary of the Academic Council. This webinar would never have been successful without the untiring effort of the head of the Economics Department, Dr. P.R. Ghoshal. The collective effort of all the professors and the students of the Economics Department also deserve a special mention in the context of this webinar. In this era of new normal amidst the COVID scenario, we would have been totally handicapped had Professor Robin Bid and Professor Jayoti Ghosh Dostidar, along with Sri John Shane of the Statistics Department, not come to our rescue. We thank them immensely. Our webinar success is recorded by the amount of excitement it has been able to generate amidst the academic community, particularly the professors of various institutions and the student community. I cannot thank you enough for being a part of this endeavor. I also thank the Alumni Association of St. Xavier's College for their fruitful cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that vote of thanks. With that, we come to the end of today's webinar. We would like to thank everyone for tuning in to this webinar. It has been a pleasure to host you.